of unity and progress within the community. It brings Dr. Herman J. great honor to announce the winner of the 2025 Puente Ganas Campeón Award. Drum roll, please. And the winner is, coming straight from somewhere in Mexico, Dr. Francisco Vázquez. Muchas felicidades, doctor. And now we are going to direct our attention to the screen. Congratulations, Dr. Vázquez.
It's your signature look. Hey, we got 2 winners at our table.
I thought everybody was a winner for a minute. I was about to say, hi, you guys doing? What are you guys doing? You know, what are you guys doing?
Time to play the lotto.
Right? Oh, I'm Junior tomorrow.
Oh, Priscilla.
Guadalajara,
My husband.
right in the center of Guadalajara, near the Parque Morelos. We moved to Cheyenne, Wyoming, because we had family there. My mom was repatriated with her parents in 1931 after living here for 12 years in Colorado, picking sugar beet and working in the coal mines. And so they lived a migrant life. My PE teacher convinced me not to go to UCLA and to go to the Claremont colleges. And the Claremont colleges are private colleges known as the Harvard of the West. But he didn't tell me that Claremont Men's College, because there are 5 colleges in one graduate school, and I was going to Claremont Men's. He didn't tell me that it was a nest of conservative Republicans. I was going to be a high school teacher in Spanish, because I figured that would be the easiest thing to do. But then I ran into a group of students that got into a special program funded by Rockefeller. And these were considered at-risk students. Here I come, very naive, Mexican, my identity was very Mexican. And they're calling themselves Chicanos. My father's take on Cesar Chavez was that when they were boycotting, says, they're just lazy people, they don't want to work. He had no political consciousness. And I didn't really believe him. No, there's something going on here. We pressured the university into giving us a budget for a Chicano Studies Center, a Chicano Studies professors, Chicano Studies recruiter, and a counselor. I grew up in that kind of environment where you can actually create social change if you just engage in action. Never really, I was totally blind to discrimination. And so when I went to college and I started taking Chicano history courses, or just learning from my friends, I immediately found myself in this historical framework where our people have been struggling. So I wanted to write a book on Latin American philosophy, but politics and culture. So the book is called Latino-Latina Thought, Culture, Politics, and Society. And it's about, it has an introduction to students describing or defining what politics are. Because the word política in Mexico means policy in English. But really the book is about how the United States government appropriated Cubans, Puerto Ricans, well, Mexicans first, through military intervention. Mexicans, Cubans, and Puerto Ricans. So how they became embodied into, they incorporated into the United States. So the struggle continues, and it just takes different shapes. And what I do is I just keep planting seeds. and then some of them grow and some of them don't. And we don't know how bad things are going to get. Lift our heads up and continue doing what our ancestors have been doing, which is struggling for those human lives.
He cares about people. Second, he's committed to justice. And third, I consider him a gentleman and a scholar.
Said to a historian that he's encouraged me to do my genealogy, which I've done in the past, but he really has been encouraging me a lot to keep writing and writing, because it goes away if you don't write it down. His infectious smile, his dependability, he's always there as a friend, and he calls a spade a spade. If there's something that he doesn't like, and even if you're a friend, he'll tell you.
I just want to offer my congratulations for this award, this Campeón award from the Cien. It's a great honor, well deserved.
Francisco, congratulations. Not a better person to get it than you.
Since Herman told me about the award, I have been writing and thinking and writing about what to say in 8 minutes. And I think I've written a book just thinking about what to say. Even this morning, I still made changes to what I have to say. And especially knowing that we're running out of time, I'm going to be brief. But this award comes as a surprise, delightful surprise, because all I've done is really to follow the example of so many people who have been engaged in doing what has to be done for human dignity. And also, I'm surprised because I've been known to ruffle a few feathers. Thank you. I dedicate this award to past, present, and future activists. So I also had to prepare, basically was a lecture, I must confess. But I'd like to just talk about my journey, and you saw part of it, through the lens of the relationship between power, knowledge, and justice. I recently wrote a memoir about my times at Claremont. And I wrote that I have had two epiphanies in my life. One was when I made my first communion. I felt so much power that when I was walking home with my grandparents, I thought I could step in the middle of the street and stop a bus with my bare hands. That only lasted until I was 15 when I left the Catholic Church, but it felt really good to feel that kind of power. The second epiphany in my life was when I joined the Chicano student movement. My generation, in 1968, which was, at least at Claremont, the first time that they admitted minorities in large numbers. And my generation felt that we could actually change the world, and revolution was in the air. I was thinking about a joke that my wife told me, don't tell that joke. It's been bugging me. You know that in the Titanic,
the orchestra kept on playing as the Titanic was sinking. But I bet you didn't know that the orchestra was a marimba orchestra. It's a dad joke. But I think it points to how Mexican people, and not only Mexican people, all people in the world, in all cultures, have faced a lot of difficulties, just like we're facing right now. So before I go on, I do need to thank Dr. Herman J. Hernandez for nominating me, Manny Valdenegro for nominating me each year before, the board of directors for selecting me, and gracias Herman G., Magali Telles for the hard work, and everybody else for the hard work putting this on, Hector Vázquez for doing the video, and I also want to acknowledge the presence of my son, Joaquin and Priscilla, who flew from Los Angeles to be here, and they got delayed, didn't make it until 2:30 in the morning, but I think they're awake. So, I feel like I should be talking until Herman drags me out of here. But, I think I'd like to say that Los Cien, as much as he has done, it is built on the shoulders of a lot of other people before. And as you saw in the video, I firmly believe that locating ourselves in history really gives us the identity of who we really are. And so I think it's important to recognize that, as I said a minute ago, we have faced so many apocalypses, really. If you think back to the Spanish conquest of Mexico, if you think of the Mexican-American War, the lynchings that happened afterwards, the discrimination, the massive deportations in the 30s and 50s, today, excuse me, and yet we face that with a lot of courage and a lot of music, and we're always singing and crying at the same time. So I think it's important to see that, or to think that what has kept us, what has helped us survive, is that we know, or we try to care for each other. And thus, in the 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century, mutualistas, mutual aid societies were prevalent. And I think Los Cien is today's mutual aid society organization. So a lot has been done by Los Cien. I'm one of the founders of Los Cien. I founded, before that, I didn't found Los Latinos Unidos. I was here before. But I did join the Hispanic Chamber when I moved here. I did join Latino Service Providers. I founded Latino Council 1 and 2 in the Coalition for Latino Civic Engagement, which gave birth really to Los Cien. And I think I shout out to Herman J. because he found the formula to make a successful organization last more than 1 or 2 years. But a lot remains to be done. Some of us imagine Los Cien coordinating the Latino Student Congress, which I created many years ago, but it's currently in the hands of NBOP, and the youth promoters of the Latino Service Providers. We imagine also coordinating with Jobs with Justice teachings of self-sustainability. Shout out to Davin Cardenas. Channeling the research produced by Sonoma State and faculty towards policies that address social issues. For example, create an evaluation system to assess every law enforcement encounter with civilians. A shout out to John Mutz. And an ongoing voter education, registration and education project. These are some of the ways in which Cien can be a focus of resistance against rising totalitarianism. So you're thinking, great ideas, Francisco, but how reasonable are your expectations when the world seems to be falling apart? So the last thing I want to say is just a very brief discussion about the nature of power. All life is defined by power to reproduce itself and to survive. Therefore, all sentient beings exercise power to some extent or another, either for their own interest or for the interest of the community and society. And it changes constantly within individuals and society on an everyday, sometimes hourly basis, which way we go. The problem is that we humans tend to fall in love with power. A college student, low-income young woman of color in my economic democracy class told the class, I don't want to control the excess of wealthy and powerful people because someday I will be wealthy and powerful. This is a prevalent belief, and it points to the unconscious complicity of many of us in the concentration and eventual abuse of power. We don't really want to control power if it means losing current privileges we enjoy, small as it may be. It's a kind of Stockholm syndrome. We are afraid to displease those who have control over us and our families, so we go along with them or stay silent. The abuse of power is a real addiction, just like any other addiction. And it has always caused much suffering and bloodshed. Yet, not surprisingly, the medical establishment refuses to categorize it as an addiction. We should send all those addicted to power to rehab. On the other hand, there is no such thing as absolute power. There is only an ebb and flow. Resistance arises when a critical number of people lose not only their privileges, but their personal, their personal integrity and dignity. No justice, no peace. And this is why history keeps repeating itself. Revolutions happen all the time. My grandfather fled Mexico because of the 19th Revolution. And then he was repatriated in the 1930s because there was another kind of revolution. It was actually the crash of 1929 created by the robber barons. In the 1960s, I lived through the Cultural Revolution. And now the wannabe robber barons are back, and they want to turn the New Deal back to what it was before. So what are we going to do? Well, there is hope. The good news is that though seasonal, hope in the form of interdependence and solidarity is embedded in our universe and in our nature. Diversity, inclusion, and hybridity are essential elements of evolution since the Big Bang. Even our own bodies are made of millions of alien microbes. In human relations, we call it compassion, empathy, and feelings, and feeling other people's pain. Like the flocks of birds that make different shapes against the sky without central leadership, and with each bird knowing which way to fly, we in this room know what we have to do. It's called unconscious collaboration, and it is also prevalent in nature. We must continue to do what we have always done to survive during a harsh season. We learn about collective self-sufficiency and how to be prepared to support each other if or when there is a breakdown of ecological systems. And so my answer is that it is reasonable to continue to have high hopes and expectations. The success of Los Cien, or rather the success of our resistance, depends on our willingness to provide the necessary resources. So even when it feels like we are just rearranging the chairs in the Titanic, we must lift our heads high, face our historical roles, and continue to resist in every way we can while taking care of each other and listening to our favorite marimba music. Thank you very much for your attention.
Once again, thank you